Yet another aspect of managing risk is managing personnel in the enterprise and all of the organizational security policies that support that. So one of the ways that we deal with this is by having a consistent and repeatable way by which people within the organization conduct their tasks. That's a standard operating procedure, or SOP. An example of which might be, before I can send an email that contains a sensitive document, I might have to first insert some kind of a security card on the machine before that's even allowed. Other ways that we manage personnel with policies are by enforcing things like mandatory vacations and job role rotation. The idea here isn't necessarily to make sure that people don't get burned out, although that's important, but part of it is so that others that occupy user roles, when people are on vacation or have moved on to other roles, is to identify any anomalies. Is there any fraud that might have been taking place, or something like that? We then have separation of duties as another personnel management type of control. Separation of duties allows us to make sure that we've always got more than one person completing a business process. So we don't have a single person conducting a process from beginning to end. So the idea is that we want to reduce the likelihood of internal fraud, although if you have a couple of people working together to commit fraud, which is collusion, we're not really stopping that by working with separation of duties. And then we have to think about any policies surrounding the hiring of potential new employees. This means scraping social media. Social media scraping, which happens often these days, means that either we hire this out or we do it ourselves. We visit various social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, just to gauge someone's character based on their posts, the type of pictures they make available, or anything they might have said about previous employers. Then there's standard Google searches or Bing searches, depending on your search engine of choice, to see what you can find out about people. Then running actual background checks, looking for a criminal record or unpaid fines, or even running a credit check in some case, or interviewing close friends or colleagues, depending on the nature and the sensitivity of the job. Interestingly, if you look at some of the hiring policies related to the National Security Agency, or NSA, they're pretty detailed about making sure there's nothing in someone's past that could be used for blackmail in the future to give away national secrets. Or there's no reason that someone might be tempted with money if they're deeply in debt, again, to sell national secrets to foreign agents. So let's take a look at some examples of what we might use as a third-party service to do this kind of background checking and this social media scraping. Here in my web browser, I've gone to a company called HireRight, but there are many other organizations that do this, that are in business to run background checks for organizations seeking to ensure that they're hiring the right people. So as we go down further through here, we get a list of some of the things that these types of organizations will do when they perform personnel background checks. So criminal record searches, credit reports, education, and employment verifications to make sure people aren't falsifying information on resumes or during job interviews. All this is going to be a very important part of feeding into risk management when it comes to personnel or human resources. Now, once a decision has been made to hire somebody, the next thing that would occur would be the onboarding process. And every organization does this a little bit differently, such as requiring the signing of a non-disclosure agreement or an NDA. NDAs are legal documents that are designed to ensure that whoever signs it does not disclose any sensitive information that might come across during the course of their job duties to other parties that shouldn't have that information disclosed to them. Another example of an NDA would be for trade secrets or personally identifiable information for customers or other employees within the organization. So users in the organization have to have an awareness of the security policies. So users need to sign off on it as part of the user onboarding process. They also normally will have to sign off on having access or being given things like laptops or PKI security cards to gain access to facilities and that type of thing. Being issued security badges is another aspect of making sure the policies align with security requirements. And then there are user habits. Clean desk policies are important in an organization to make sure that sensitive data isn't left hanging around, such as paper documents left on desks, or sensitive documents that were scanned on a multifunction print device on the network left in the scanning tray. Also, we want to make sure that shredding becomes a part of making sure we have a clean desk policy by shredding sensitive documents, even by outsourcing that to a third party. This means that we can mitigate things like dumpster diving. Dumpster diving is the process by which an adversary might physically try to locate sensitive documents in the trash to learn more about an organization. It's usually considered part of a reconnaissance phase as part of the overall attacking method. Then there are personally owned devices that employees might use for work purposes. Things like smartphones that they might receive some kind of a monthly fee for from the company because they're using their own device for company purposes. Now, this means that we need to have a mobile device management or an MDM solution in place. MDM solutions are really just a centralized way to register large numbers of mobile devices so that they can be centrally and consistently managed. Then there's Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, which is pretty much what we described, allowing users to bring their own tablet or smartphone or laptop computer to work, and using it is beneficial to the organization because they don't have the capital investment in those items, but at the same time it introduces risk because that device is perhaps not wholly manageable by the IT department in the organization. Part of the user onboarding process also includes user training, but not just the user onboarding. This needs to be something that recurs on a periodic basis, and it should be tailored to a specific role or job task that the user performs. Having in-depth IT security training for someone that's performing data entry probably doesn't make a lot of sense, so it needs to be tailored to the individual. Computer-based training, or CBT, including doing online training, is yet another way that people can remain current with their job-related focus. Gamification. Gamification essentially makes it fun to learn something by making it feel like a game, some kind of a friendly competition. On the IT security side, when it comes to hacking competitions, that's where you'll come into things like capture the flag contests that are done around the world at various conventions related to IT security. Then there are phishing campaigns and simulations. Now, is that something we want to teach our employee base? We don't want to teach them how to conduct a phishing campaign. That's what malicious actors do. What we want to do is train them how to recognize that they might become a victim of that, perhaps based on an email message they receive that might look legitimate but is really fraudulent. So how do we make people aware of this? Because despite all of the best technological solutions, at the end of the day, if someone breaks security rules, that could be the end of the network. It could mean data exfiltration, one single person's actions. It's happened before. So what do? We make it fun. Lunch and learns. People like free food. Maybe have lunch and learn sessions that are presented by people that are respected by the attendees so that some of that information will stick about user security. It can also be part of a penetration test. I've been involved in a couple of security audits over the years, one of which involves deception as part of the pen test, whereby you're trying to trick people in the organization into letting you into secured locations, or maybe providing sensitive details that they otherwise shouldn't. So we just want to make sure that employees in an organization understand how easy it is to be deceived into clicking something, into providing information over the phone to fraudulent users. So we've gone through the user onboarding process and the ongoing training. What about when a user is leaving the organization? So what about offboarding? Offboarding often means that we have some kind of a termination letter or a resignation letter that's been supplied, and that there's some kind of an exit interview. Most organizations will want to talk to people leaving the organization to learn about their experience and how they might improve the environment. Then there's the return of equipment. If an individual has been assigned a laptop, a badge, a security badge, a phone, or anything like that, that needs to be returned back to the organization. And of course, maybe that data needs to be backed up and stored in a separate location. Knowledge transfer. Sometimes people acquire a lot of experience when they're within a specific job role. And prior to their leaving the organization, there might be a phase where they are grooming someone that will succeed them in their position. Finally, there's account disablement versus deletion. Many organizational policies, and they're all a little bit different, but often when someone leaves the organization, we don't automatically delete the account. Instead, we might disable it so it can't be logged into, retain all the work that employee was working on, and then after a specified amount of time, as per organizational security policies, then it might be safe to delete that user account and any data that goes along with it. So when it comes to risk management, personnel, doing background checks, doing onboarding, continuous training, and offboarding can all help to make for a more secure IT ecosystem.